Like I said in the first video, y'all want to be invited to the cookout? This is the cookout. This is education. This is activation. We need you here to invite you there. And trust me, we want to. We just got to deal with some things first. So come on, get you a plate. This is That Talk. Welcome to the first episode of That Talk. I'm Javi. Let's begin. Now, think of this space as a place to begin and continue, because revolution is not a one-time event. This series is meant to be equal parts education, but more importantly, equal parts activation. You can't sit here and do nothing with information. You gotta challenge yourself and make sure that your intentions align with your impact. Because just because you meant well doesn't mean it always ends well. While our experiences are by no means monolithic, they're eerily similar. So, when was the first time you had that talk?
The first conversation I had with my father, I'd say around 10 or 11.
Back to when I was 6 years old.
I was 9 and my brother was 10. And I remember it being very awkward, very confusing.
The talk was constant, but the first time was in second grade. So that would probably have been in 1990.
8 or 9.
I would have to say probably around like 5 or 6 years old was the talk. And then as time progressed, those talks became more and more in depth.
That's real early. How was your race and your mortality communicated and tied together?
Having a conversation with my uncle in South Carolina, and my uncle was a little older. He suffered from Alzheimer's and dementia. And I remember him telling me, I had $1 in my hand and he was saying, put your damn dollar in your pocket. And me being startled as a 6-year-old, like, what are you talking about? And saying, like, those white folks, those police officers, they'll snatch that dollar out of your hand. And he went on to tell me about a story about one of his friends who was lynched.
Basically, the conversation was my mom telling my brother that he couldn't wear a chain and couldn't wear baggy pants. He had to dress differently, speak differently than all of the rest of his friends. And then a week later, my brother came home in a police car after being accused of stealing another kid's backpack, which he didn't do.
I remember seeing him getting beat up by those LAPD officers, and I asked like what was going on. And my grandmother said something to the extent, I don't want to quote her verbatim because I can't remember everything she said, but she was like, this is something that, it's been going on for years in our community. She remembers people that she grew up with being accosted by the police.
There is that threat of police brutality, but it isn't always just them.
I remember in high school finding out that someone in my class, that his father was the president of the local KKK chapter. And all I could think was, that is still like a thing, and people are like running in, and I go to school with their kids.
Friends, neighbors, classmates, you don't really ever know until you do.
He would always, we were friends, and he was like, I really like y'all, blah, blah, blah. But he always told us he could never, we would never be able to play at his house or anything because his father just didn't like Black people.
What did they say you could do to protect yourself?
And how we must never allow for police officers or law enforcement to think that we're being a threat. Specifically as Black males, we never need to present a threat in any shape, form, or fashion because it can end up being catastrophic for you.
He just said, hey, you have to, you need to be mindful of yourself when you're out there and be careful. Some people are threatened by you.
After having this talk, how'd you feel? What were you thinking?
I remember both of us just being kind of confused and thinking that it was really unfair and it was strange, and there were a lot of whys, like, why is it like this? Why do I have to do this? Why can't I dress like my friends?
And those are questions we're still asking. You see, our elders were preparing us for a battle they fought every day of their lives, the battle of imagination. Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice, Renisha McBride, they were all deemed armed and dangerous in someone's imagination. And that collective imagination is so widespread and so respected that those who do harm are very rarely held accountable. And ultimately, I think that reflects a sad reality because it shouldn't be a miracle for us to make it home. It shouldn't take an act of God for us to make it home safely every night. I knew that was a concern for them every time I left it, every single day. And not in the same way that, every parent and family member cares. They're taking a mental picture knowing that there is a chance we don't come home. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. I'm Javi, and as always, make sure your actions match your captions. I'll see you next week on That Talk.